Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima, and I'd like to finally talk to you about
eBASEBALL powerful Yakyuu.
This is the latest in the series of Konami published baseball simulators. I did not mean to press that. And, well, it's probably one of the better ones that I've played so far, out of the 3 that I've played remotely seriously. So, that ought to give you a good idea, although I have heard in the past that I've convinced people to buy way more than just a couple of these games, so that's an interesting place to be in. So I'd like to do the same thing here. I'd like to try and convince you why this series is great, why this game in particular is pretty good, and why it's worth your time. With that said, I usually do these videos in a very specific way. I usually go around the menus telling you about all the modes and all the options that are here and available, but I'm not going to do that because that would take forever and that's a really bad idea. So what we're going to do is we're going to go play an exhibition game, and already you can see the amount of options that we've got access to here. Everything from playing a single player on the field, that is, not as by yourself, multiple players, managing the game, playing online, and even just watching. It's ridiculous how many options you have, but this is Power Pros, that's the sort of thing that they do. You've also got 4 different difficulties, I should say, with some custom difficulties down the bottom here, but those custom difficulties aren't particularly useful considering that what these change can actually change from mode to mode, and it doesn't usually depend on like these little tiers they've got set out here. So we're just going to select the third option. This is the AI difficulty, so I'm just going to pick the second option, because why not? And I have a choice of team here. There are a few other teams I could choose here if I wanted, but I'm not going to be doing that because, well, I love me the Dina Baystars. Why? I have no idea. They're just the ones that I have always picked when I play Power Pros. I could not tell you why this is. As for the team we're going to be playing against, the Dragons will do. Designated hitter rule, and we're not going to worry about too much about this for now. We're just gonna set the inning length to 3 so that we don't have to worry too much about this game going on for too long. I will try and take you through these menus a bit more in depth later, but there is so much Japanese text in this game that it's practically impossible to do in just one video. With that said though, it's going to be the Baystars versus the Dragons. This is a NPB, which is the Nippon Professional Baseball League. It is officially licensed by them. So the 12 full teams with their full rosters and stats are all included in this game. And we can just play. That's pretty much it. I mean, there are plenty of other modes that we can go look at later, but right now, we're just going to play. I'm at bat. Here's the pitch. And he screwed up the pitch, but I screwed up the hit. So we're just going to call that one a wash. That one is also a wash because I can't hit straight. So, the thing about Power Pros that I would like to just like immediately emphasize is the way that it plays. Power Pros is a arcadey style baseball game, but it does lean a bit more towards the simulation end of things. Just a little, not too much. Which is probably exactly where I, as someone who doesn't really pay massive attention to baseball or plays it or anything along those lines, as someone who just like enjoys it from a distance, that's usually the best spot for it to be for me personally. And honestly, I think it works quite well. Because you get the inherent satisfaction of needing to aim the ball just right, but other than aiming, it just comes down to timing, more or less. There are also easier and harder ways you can make this happen, like you can speed up the pitch and you can speed up the ball speeds and the pitch speeds. You can make it so that the hitting is a little bit more complicated. You can do the pitching so that it's a lot more complicated. But outside of that, it never loses that easy to pick up and master. Well, not so much master, but it never loses that easy to pick up feeling about it, because the controls are very simple. Analog stick aims, B button swings. There's more to it than that, of course. You've got the A button for bunts, and if you press and hold one of the right shoulder buttons, it doesn't matter which one, as long as it's one of them. you can do a power hit, which is probably the only way you're going to get the ball to home run. You're not going to do it on a contact hit, which is the default. So that's a thing. That is baseball, I suppose. I admit, again, I don't watch very much baseball. Frankly, all of the baseball that I know about comes from this series. So I'm just telling you what I've picked up over like the last 5 years of me playing this series. Yeah, there is more to it, of course. Like, when you hit the ball, you can hammer away at the L and R buttons, and they'll make you sprint faster. Which is where that sort of arcadey influence comes from, because you need just that little bit of a pinch of arcade stuff going on in order to make it a little bit more friendly to the family, you know? Give them a little bit of a chance, although if you're talking about someone like me, I can already mash like the best of them. Alright, we're going to pitch now. We're also going to bitch, but, you know, that's me in general. I get a few practice pitches. This is the second pitching system. There's like 3 different pitching systems in this game. This one is the one you'll be dealing with most of the time. It's basically pick a pitch, aim it at the right spot, and hope the AI doesn't decide to... Whoa. Hope the AI doesn't decide to screw you over by making you, like, miss the pitch a little bit too much, right? What a little shit. Stealing the base. Look at him go. I love the look of this game, but we'll get to that. You do, of course, have plenty of different pitches to work with. I swear to God, the AI is just, like, immensely capable of reading my bloody pitches at this point. It's managed to catch me off guard so many times. Oh, there he goes. Yeah, totally not letting that one go, mate. There we go. We can also change the type of pitching if we so desire. I was never a big fan of this kind of pitching. Oh, it's this one. I was never a big fan of the pitching you just saw. Mainly because of how the AI can just suddenly decide, like, hey, I want that pitch to miss now. So if you do what I just did and swap the pitching to the 2-hit system, it also starts to rely on timing with the stamina of your pitcher determining whether or not with the stamina of your pitcher determining how much of a window you have to get the pitch right. But even then, that's about as hard as it gets. So it does maintain that overall arcade-friendly flavoring, which I'm a fan. Wow, did he really catch that? That looked like that was about to land. There's really not that much else in the way of the controls. In fact, the fielding and the running controls might be the most complex of the control schemes available. For example, holding the X button will make everyone move to the next base. Holding A will make them return to the previous base. Seriously, that's about as complicated as it gets. If you're on fielding, the 4 face buttons are the 4 bases, but you've also got the R and the ZR buttons, which will throw to the infielder, so that you have an easier time of throwing it to any particular base. Again, it's really simple stuff, and it's easy to pick up. Which is why Power Pro 2016, this isn't 2016, this is 2020 obviously, but back when I played Power Pro 2016, it's why I found myself enjoying it so much, because you don't need to be massively skilled in baseball to be able to get the idea and get some enjoyment out of it. Especially since it's so simple. You can put the difficulty down like as far as you like in at least some situations, although in some modes like the Pennant mode, for example, the difficulty settings will be locked. There's a sneeze for you. Come on, little dude, you can do it. There we go. I do not want to let off my guard for a second with this AI. It has creamed me before, even at this difficulty. Another pitcher with the what's his face right there. I can't remember the name of the role. It's like the shortstop, isn't it? I'd be lying if I said I remember. But yeah, it's so simple, and even better, it's really satisfying. Getting a good hit with that really satisfying clunk of the bat, and knowing that you hit it in exactly the right spot to send it exactly where you want to go in order to drop the ball somewhere that isn't going to basically be covered by one of the defenders is very satisfying. It is immensely satisfying to get it just right. And being able to pitch all your balls perfectly, this is starting to sound more homoerotic the further this video goes on. Being able to pitch all the balls perfectly so that they either go straight into one of your fielders or just into the strike zone, or even better, tricking him to swing for something he couldn't possibly hit. It remains immensely satisfying, and when people ask you, like, what's so satisfying about watching a game of baseball, it's basically watching these two duke it out. The pitcher and the batter. The pitcher is on the attack, the batter's on the defense. And the batter needs to stop that ball from getting through by whatever means necessary. It's a weird analogy I give you, but when you play this for long enough, and you start to get like a feel for this sort of thing, it just becomes inherently satisfying to play. Being able to get two people out off a bad ball down the middle of the field. Being able to send a ball straight out and over the boundaries. And getting that fantastic like cheer from the crowd is immensely satisfying. Come on, little dudes. It's alright. It's one run. It's one run. It's one run. Not to mention just the atmosphere that's being communicated through the game itself here. Like, how cool is it to watch all these little dudes get so hyped over this baseball game? It's too bad they aren't more like separated, more like everyone being their own like unique entity, but you know, it's a baseball game, you can't really do that. It's even got all their stats down the bottom there as well, which we will dig into later on in this video. It just helps give it that feeling of authenticity. While Power Pros isn't exactly something that is taken entirely seriously, at least in a mode like this, or in the Pennant mode, or in the My Life mode, when this game needs to get serious, it gets pretty serious. And I appreciate that it knows exactly when it needs to do that and exactly when it shouldn't. Some people actually really dislike this chibi style, but some people absolutely adore it. And I can understand both sides, and I'm on the adore side, because they went to a lot of effort to reconstruct all of these like actual players' faces. And I was able to recognize one or two of them when I went and looked it all up on Wikipedia. So I'm not going to argue too heavily with how they managed to pull that off. As for how the game looks, well, it looks legitimate. The stadiums look pretty good. The crowds in the background are fascinating to look at. There we go. There's that home run. There's the commentator going off his nut. The commentary in this game, despite the fact that I can't understand it, it never gets tiring. Which I appreciate. Because it's very hard to do commentary in these games right. Even the English language versions of Power Pros back when they came out in the mid to late 2000s were a little bit shit at this. No, it doesn't matter. I'm 9 runs ahead, he says, tempting fate. Yeah, just the one thing that I want to point out is that it plays a real mean game of baseball. Except for when you're trying to play it portably. Because I've tried to play this portably, and the resurrection. What the hell is the resurrection? The resolution takes a dive so hard that it makes it look like a shitty FMV from 2006. You're out. Or should I say, outdoor! Yamazaki, outdoor! Actually, no, that's not right. It would be, Jose now, wouldn't it? Man, this guy just cannot catch a break to save his life. Don't worry, I get into plenty of situations like this a lot, so it doesn't surprise me that he's having the same troubles. But oh well. Game, set, match. I win by 10-1. I literally had like 2 failed takes where I tried to play on the AI on this difficulty and it smashed me. I think it was like 14-7 and then 12-3. But you even get player of the match, and there's your reporter who won't show his face. It doesn't even look like he has eyes. Then you get a replay of the best shots. And we just head on back to the main menu. But yeah, that was a quick look at the gameplay, and I hope that'll tide you over for all the menu diving we have to do now, because we have to do a lot of menu diving. Hooray! But anyway, that message was telling us that we have managed to get ourselves a bunch of power points, which are this game's currency. And we'll get into that later, which is in the next few minutes, because now we're going to go through some of the menus for a bit, because there is a few concepts and things that need to be explained. So, with that said, let's go and have a look at the individual player menu data first. Now, I'm just going to take the time to explain how this game's baseball statistics work, more or less. How the players and their stats are calculated. So, if we pick, say, just someone on the batting team, for example, of the Dina Baystars. So, Mr. Miyazaki here. I don't know what his first name is, but I do know he was born on the 12th of December of 88. He has a batting average of 2.284, and a bunch of other things I can't read. But basically, here are the stats. So, these stats are numeric. They go from, I believe it's G to S, and they determine how effective you are at doing specific things. So just to rally off them here, you got trajectory, which is how high you can do fly balls. You've got contact and power, if I'm getting that right. Yeah, contact and power. So contact is how much room you've got to hit the ball. Power is how much you obviously give it some oomph. The next one below that, E43, that's his speed. So his speed determines how fast he runs, whenever he's on defense or running on bases. Then you've got his arm strength, which is how far he can throw the ball. You've got his defense, which is how he'll catch the ball and how he'll manage to throw it off to another person in a smooth movement. And then you've got his error proneness, which means that how often he'll screw up, like he'll drop the ball or he'll miss a play or something like that. The higher it is, the less likely he is to fuck up. Then you've also got pitching stats. So if I come back over here to a pitcher, we've got the speed that he can pitch at, the control he has over the ball, which determines what sort of pitches he has available to him, his stamina, and then the pitches that he has available to him and how effective he is at throwing them. So that one that goes down 4, that means he's able to throw it in such a way that'll really make it cover some downward distance. Whatever that pitch may be. Excuse the burp from my throat there. So, there are some more things on this stat screen, of course, and the thing that oh yeah, if I bring it back over here, just as an example, let's go back and find our friend from, yeah, here's Miyazaki. So you can see here on this screen that there are some stats you've already seen before, E43 and D56, but you can also see how effective he is in aggregate across the positions he's capable in. So if I remember correctly, this is shortstop, pitcher, first baseman, second baseman. Oh no, that might be pitcher and first from top down, left to right. Pitcher, shortstop, first, second, third, home, infielder and outfielder. It's something like that. It just basically tells you how good they are in any particular position. But the main thing I wanted to talk about and what really makes Power Pro special in terms of creating individual players is their traits. They probably have some name for it in Japanese. It's probably like special skills or something along those lines, but I call them traits because I feel it more appropriate to call them traits because that's what they are. So the blue traits that we've got here are all unique special abilities, or special stat buffs, or special boosts or bonuses, or what have you. If I can just get my phone without absolutely knocking my microphone over, I might actually be able to translate what this does for you. Because there are multiple dozen traits in this game, unlike, say, Super Mega Baseball, which has been known for... not known for it, but I know that it has a system very similar to this one. But you can't have like 24 traits at once. You can only have like 1 or 2 on custom players at the most. So anyway, apparently the one I've got highlighted is strong hitting spheres in the direction of flow. Cool. What's this one? Good for sinking. So that probably means he's better at sending it off in one direction versus another. This one, even you can stick even if it comes out. I don't even know what that means. These can be a bit weird, but basically it means that they can do things at specific times. Like there's a couple that I like to pull out. For example, there's one very specific one where if all the bases are loaded, you have a higher hit chance. Or you have the ability to slide across the ground in order to get to a base. Or just little things like that. These are all traits, and there are dozens of them. And they are applied across every single character on the roster. And I believe this is one of the best things about this, because it means that all those little things that the players are able to do better than something else can be represented in this sort of game without having to go ridiculously in depth with it. It's a great little solution that's in between making it too complex and keeping it too simple. And there's even a couple of other neat things too, like you've got red traits here, which are negative traits. Let me see if I can just translate this one and have it make any sense. I doubt it. When it comes to hey, the strike is lowered. What happens if I just scan it regularly? Thank you very much, Google Translate. If you come in, the hitting power will decrease. So I'm guessing that means if he's third up, the hitting power will decrease. So he won't be able to hit as far. That makes sense. But then you've also got these green ones. And these green ones actually tell the AI what to do when they're controlling this particular person. So if you're trying to like recreate a certain player, or if they're trying to make players behave more like they would in the game, then they can use these little AI ones in order to convince them to act in a certain way. And it's a really cool idea, actually. I approve of the AI ones more than I approve most of the other ones, just because it's such a cool little trick that they can do to make these players behave a little bit more like their real-world counterparts. So these systems are pretty damn in-depth, but it wouldn't be very good if you couldn't make custom characters. Turns out you can. So here are the custom characters I've got. Some of them I made, some of them have been downloaded, and we'll get to that. But you can make your own custom characters via a bunch of different modes available in the game, and then they can be exported to your custom player roster. And then you can use them in other modes. And this interconnectivity is one of the coolest things about Power Pro Baseball in general, and I'd like to explain what I mean back on the main menu. So here's what I mean. Over here is a mode called Crown 9. It's one of the more popular ones in this game series, and Crown 9 is basically a high school team management simulator, where you can take over a high school team, guide them through multiple years of tournaments and all that, to try and get them to the top of Japanese high school baseball tournament known as Koshien, which is basically the equivalent of like American college football. And then, at the end of their 3 years of school life, their student data will be exported, so you can actually use them as custom players once they leave the school, because the idea of the mode is that you have to train up all the players, right? So now that you've got that custom player, what you can do with it is then put it through this mode, which is the My Life mode. And the My Life mode is exactly what it sounds like. You take control of one player, and you put them through something like 30 years or potentially less if you want to retire early. Amount of baseball games, baseball seasons, take your pick, And once you've done that, you can then export them again back to your player database, and then you can do more stuff with them. So here's Pennant mode, for example, which is exactly what it sounds like. You take a team through the leagues of the Japanese baseball, of the NPB, and you try and get to the very top of the Japan... Is it the Climax series? I think that's the name of it. This is like the one mode that I never play when these games come along, but yes. So you can take that guy and then put him in a team and then send him through the Pennant mode. Once he's been through the My Life mode and once he's been through the Crowd 9 mode. And you can also do this in a plethora of different ways. So do you want to do this with the Power Festival mode, which is basically this game's arcade mode? You can take a dude from that, put him through My Life, and then put him in Pennant. Do you want to do a success mode character? You can take him and then just put him in Pennant. Do you want to just make like 20 random dudes, make a team out of them, and see how far you can get as one of them in My Life? You can do that. It is really interconnected in the most... I accidentally pressed the L button on the controller, which automatically reassigns the controllers. Thank you. It is so interconnected and so well done that I absolutely love this series for pulling off something like that so flawlessly. And there is a bunch of other things you can do as well. You want to make a custom team and take them online and fight other players' custom teams? You can do that. That is absolutely a thing you can do. But by far, the most impressive thing that you can do with this system. So if we go to this menu here, head up the very top, and pay 100 power points, which are very easy to earn, or at least 100 power points is very easy to earn, we can get a really shitty picture. Hooray! That's not usually how this goes. That's more like it. Look at that holy hell, that's some good stats. 747 stars, ain't that something? But yep, you can go online and grab other players. Other people's custom created players, and then you can use them in any way that you want to whatsoever. Like for example, this guy here who is maxed out on literally everything, I could buy him if I wanted for 63,000 power points. Or I could be a little bit more reasonable and just buy this guy here for 5,800 power points. With that said, he's actually pretty good pretty much everywhere, so this guy would be absolutely fantastic on defense. But not only can you do this with players, you can also do it with teams. So you can go and get people's custom teams, and you can download them. I've already downloaded a few, so you get the general idea. But you can go and download other people's teams, other people's players, put them into their own custom teams, and do whatever you want with them. So, do you want to download like 24 people's custom teams? Well, more like 16, I should say. Do you want to download 16 people's custom teams? Do you want to add in like a bunch of real-world players just for the fun of it? Do you want to put in like a bunch of people from the success mode once you've unlocked the ability to get them? Like, look, this is this team's players. Do you want to grab all of like 16 teams from people all over the internet, download them, and then put them all into one My Life game, and then slot in yourself as like a random bloody shortstop on one of those teams and just watch the pennant play out between them? You can do that, and it's glorious. It is absolutely glorious, and we haven't even gone into all of the other modes that we can go and do yet, but I'd like to finish up with everything else along the bottom here first. So, there's a bunch of things we can do down here. This is a survey. I'd suggest ignoring it. I can't read Japanese. I don't know if I'd be answering their questions accurately, so I'm not going to do that. We have a settings menu where you can change the default settings for things like exhibition games. You can change your own settings, including everything from the speed of pitches to the camera settings, to how much lock-on you have by default, to how the fielding and the pitching works, to how much the computer will take over for you or how effective it will be in any particular area. I will note though that depending on the mode, those settings will have basically no impact. You'll also have your own profile that you can name, customize the look of and the location and the quotes and all that for when you go online. This button right here lets you import people from the last Power Pros game that was on the Switch, but I don't have any custom dudes from that, so I can't do that. Sound sliders, background music, and I can't remember what this is. Oh, I remember what this is. This is the credits. Yeah, that's the credits. Let's not watch them. I would usually go to the effort of translating those settings, but honestly, most of the time, I can't understand them anyway. You saw an example of that when I was trying to translate those abilities from people. So, if we just go back online for a second. So we have the encyclopedia over here. It has plenty of baseball terminology, all in Japanese. I can't read it. That's the long and the short of that menu, I guess. Now we have the PowerPoints menu. And the PowerPoints menu is where you go to spend money that you earn by playing every individual mode. You saw earlier on in this video that I earned a few hundred PowerPoints from playing that match. So I can come in and I can spend them on whatever I want, and there's a lot to buy. You have different kinds of pitch to buy. You have an extra stadium. You have different commentators. You have background music. You have items for every individual mode. So you can take these items in and you can use them in order to improve your chances of getting a good player out. And there are a ton of these items, a lot of which that I have because I've been being very diligent on the main menu. You also have OB players. I don't know what that means in Japanese terms, but this basically means like legendary players, players that they couldn't put on a team for some reason. Like, for example, when Shohei Ohtani went to the West, they added him into Power Pros 2018 as an OB player. So you can get him if you like, he just can't be put into a team without editing a team first. You've also got the ability to get characters from the success mode, both their appearance and I believe their actual characters as well, although I'd be lying if I said I spent the PowerPoints to actually check that. So you've got a lot to spend your money on. There is also DLC, but as far as I can tell, the only DLC that they've put in this so far is the pre-order pack that you get. It just has a bunch of items that you can earn in the game anyway, and a bunch of background music. Again, something, well, I don't think you can earn the background music in-game, but still, it's, you know, it's licensed music. It would cost money for them to maintain that license, so whatever. I'm not particularly faffed about that. And it's not like Pro Yakyuu Spirits either, where they tried to add a Diamond Dynasty style mode and it didn't end up so well. Back in the 2019 version of that, which was not great. So the last three things we have along the bottom of the screen here. We have a song creator, which I will snip in some footage of me using right now. I'm not very good at making songs, I'll admit, but it's pretty in-depth. You can do a lot of different notes, a lot of different sound effects and drums and chants, and you can make your own victory song for your own custom team. That's pretty cool. You've also got a pitch maker, which you can use to tweak the stats of certain pitches, give them certain special effects, and use them on your own custom players if you so desire. It's actually pretty useful. Because, well, I mean, making a custom pitch is pretty useful for making a pitcher stand out. You've already seen these two. This is arrange teams, and this is have a look at the individual stats. And this here is the training system. And it is a very useful system because you have the ability while you're playing at bat to make it so that the pitcher will only pitch certain pitches. so that you can practice against certain pitches if you have trouble against them, which is great. You can also do the same thing with when you're pitching, so that you have to be focusing and aiming on a certain area. And you've also got fielding practice, where you can just set the dude to do very specific hits, or you can set him to do random hits and just practice like that for a while. It's all very useful, especially if you're very new to this game and you're trying to get used to like the timing of it or whatever. And so the last thing we have before we get into the modes proper is the Pawa Arena. That's probably how you pronounce that, probably just less retardedly. So in Pawa Arena, you've got two options. The first option is pretty cool. So, what is this? Is this success mode? I would be lying if I said I knew what this is, but the idea is that you get a certain goal to do. And you generally need to do this. You generally need to do this goal as much as humanly possible. Let's see if I can figure out what this says. The strongest player to aim for the first time, Powerful Agricultural University. Right, so it's the first story in the success mode. So my guess is that you have to play that for a while. I don't know how exactly they would determine what the goal is. It was probably in the text that I skipped. But yeah, basically you've got a goal and you go for it. You figure out what you need to do. You do it as much as you can, and they'll give you a reward at the end of the week or whatever. So if you're just looking for something to do, they'll give you something to do. You've also got the ability to check your position on certain previous ones. So this one in particular is a home run attack goal, where you had to basically just hit the ball as far as you could. So basically just banging your head against home run attack as much as humanly possible, which is a nice touch, you know? Just, you know, give you a reason to go in and practice as much as humanly possible. You've also got this option down the bottom here, which gives you achievements to do. And it also gives you tons of items. So the way that this works is every individual mode has achievements that are tracked via, like, you know, just your general, that are tracked just by you generally playing them, right? It also tracks the amount of time you've been playing. So as you can see, I've been playing for nearly 15 hours at this point. But you can also see all the time that you've been playing on all the other modes and how much you've been doing on all the other modes. And you also get a letter grade, which is also very thoroughly tracked. And you can also see who else is on the leaderboards. So you can just see who's completed the game the most in the very little amount of time that it's been out. Some people are already at rank A with like 50 hours of game time. And I find that kind of ridiculous, but let them do them, I suppose. So that was a look at all the menu stuff. Now, this is going to be a little bit weird. I admit that the editing on this might be a bit unusual, but I'm going to be talking about all of these modes in detail, and I have footage from all of these modes in relative detail. There's a couple that I'll have to skip, and you'll understand why. So, let's get on to it and talk about it. So we already played a game of the Versus mode, or the Exhibition mode as I like to call it, because that's basically what it is, right? So we don't need to talk about that. We also don't need to talk about Pennant that much, mainly because I don't play Pennant. I've never played Pennant in these games, and it's usually the most language-heavy mode of them all. But trust me, there are so many menu options as to how to examine or manage your team in terms of their training, their composition, however you plan on taking them through to the Japan Climax series, that, yeah, there's so much there that it just makes my head spin. And I can't play it because, again, I can't really translate it. But it's there if you want it. So my life mode is pretty easy to understand. You pick one player, whether it be in the traditional set of 12, that you dump in. So you can bring in like a custom player, put them into any one of the 12 teams, and then fight your way through tryouts, and then get on through to like the main league, if you like. Or you can bring in your own entire set of custom teams, and then just drop in as one player. And the idea is you go through day by day, You have energy and motivation to manage, you have funds, you have fans. You need to keep your fans up by performing well. You need money, but you get money by being promoted and basically doing well. You buy equipment, you go shopping, you go through events, you play games, and there are things like, you know, getting married and stuff like that going on in there. All of that good stuff that you would expect from a sort of campaign game. It's very long though. It is incredibly long trying to play it, especially if you plan on playing all the games. Thankfully, they do include plenty of ways to get around that, including one of the better features that I feel this game offers for casual players, where you can only play where the game gets exciting, which is a nice touch. And you can also just skip matches entirely if you feel like it and let the AI take over. There are also things like goals and achievements, like getting a home run on every stadium to have to do. And you can just do them if you want or don't. It's not like I care. But yeah, it's a good mode. It's a bit long, and it takes a bit of effort to get through, but there's nothing wrong with my life and my... I had a feeling I was going to do that at some point. There's nothing wrong with my life as I see it. Bloody words.
Nagoya Dome です。中日ドラゴンズ対横浜。柳降板、右の三つ間、今日2番手としてマウンドに上がります。ベイスターズ打線相手にどういった投球を見せるのか。投げた、逆らわずに右へ、ライト前ヒット。加藤、いいバッティング。さあ第1球投げた、決まってストライク。まずは見送りました。初球ストライクから第2球、外の球空振り、バッター追い込まれました。第3球を投げました、打ちました。いい当たり、ショートオーバー、センター前クリーンヒット、セーフ、二塁がセーフ。加藤、ドラゴンズ何としても得点を挙げたい9回です。バッター京田、打ちました。サード左、アウト。ゲームセット。ベイスターズ見事勝利を収めました。さて本日の日、名古屋ドームです。ベイスターズ追う展開で迎える6回です。ツーアウトランナー一塁という場面で加藤、投げました。2球目ストライク。第3球を投げました。外れた、ボール。投球これから4球目、危ない球。第5球投げました、打ちました。これはピッチャー正面、アウト。スリーアウトチェンジ、一塁ラン。さあこの勝負でゲームの流れを引き寄せるか。ドラゴンズ内野陣はゲッツー体制。投げました、カットボールはボール。まずは外角。第2球投げた、ストライク。伸びのあるストレート。投球は3球目投げた、見送ってボール。第4球を投げた、4球で空振り、タイミング合いません。さあ5球目、打ったいい当たりはライナー、クリーンヒット。二塁ランナー三塁へ、ボールは中継へ。 外三塁決定ホームへ。ベイスターズゲームを振り出しに戻しました。3対3。ベイスターズ見事チャンスをものにしました。これでチームに勢いが増すことでしょう。さあ先ほどの同点の場面です。さあワンアウトランナー一塁二塁という場面で倉本第1球投げた。ストレート決まってストライク。第2球投げた。まっすぐ見送ってストライク。バッター追い込まれました。第3球を投げました。三振。倉本三球三振に倒れました。代打は関根。第1球投げました。直球ストライク。アウトローへ。タイミング合いません。第2球投げました。打った痛烈な当たり。取ってこれでスリーアウトチェンジ。先ほどのプレーです。8回の表、同点で迎える9回です。ノーアウトランナー一塁という場面で強打スリーバントだ。ピッチャーの左へ転がした一塁アウト。ランナー二塁に進みました。ベイスターズサヨナラのピンチとなりました。第3球を投げました。決まってストライク。追い込んでいます。第4球は初球見逃し三振。さあリプレイです。ランナー1人を置いて迎えるバッターはどの上。ベイスターズ打ちました。飛びついた。取りました。これでスリーアウト。
Anyway, next mode. That would be... what should I talk about next? Let's talk about the Crowd 9 mode. So the Crowd 9 mode is really weird. It is a high school baseball team management sim where you have cards that determine what kind of training they do. You can also determine what kind of training they do manually. And then you try and land on certain colors of spaces and avoid other certain colors of spaces in order to train them up. You can also buy equipment. You can also scout for other players, which is apparently new in 2020, but something that I didn't come across. You've got a bunch of other things going on, but the main way that you actually play this mode is that you drop into a game and you don't play them directly, but you give them advice. So you tell them whether or not to go for one side of the strike zone or the other side of the strike zone. You can tell them to try and hit fly balls as hard as they possibly can. You can tell them how hard to go for anything in particular. So like you can say, don't use the contact cursor. So don't use the, I should say the power cursor. So don't try and hit it out of the park, but take as many swings as you possibly can. You know, things along those lines, right? So you have a lot of strategy to be going on with there, with all the individual players and all their little ways and how they'll grow. And it's also an interesting mode. It's also kind of hard to play because there's a lot of text, but thankfully they actually put everything that's really important into this one manager's memos part of the menu system that you can just translate by pointing your phone at it. And most of the time that I saw, it managed to get the gist of it when there was that much text to translate. So it's actually not that hard to play once you get a hold of it, because everything is quite visual. All the cards have these little pictures on them that give you a really rough idea of what they're going to at least attempt to do. And everything else can be figured out by relying on, like, say, how the menus look when you're playing through them, right? So it gives you a fair amount of freedom in what you want to do in raising your team. And it actually lets you start from like all the way back in 1939, and it even like keeps track of what players were in what school in what year. So you can actually start in like the 1950s and have like a couple of famous players already on the team ready to be improved. And you try and take them through to the American high school equivalent of baseball, which is Collegiate, which is American like college football or whatever it is. It's a cool mode. I don't play it very often. It takes a lot of effort, and again, it's also quite a long mode for my personal tastes. But yeah, there's nothing particularly wrong with Crown 9 as a mode. It's just raising high school kids to be good at baseball.
ゲームはこ三遊間ライナーで破ったレフト前ヒット。秋山ナイスバッティング。楠谷さあファイトを前面に押し出したバッティングをしてほしい。初球から打ってった。ライト前に出るヒット。ボールは中継。楠山1点リードを奪いました。3対2。バッターは2年。さあ闘志あふれるバッティングを見せてくれるか。ライナーだ。ライト前ヒット。ライトからセカンドへ。二塁はセーフ。小野寺。さあここを乗り越えて成長したい。バッターは3。機械のごとき精密さを発揮することができるか。打ちました。三塁ランナーホームに向かう。本塁フォースアウト。アウト。ダブルプレー。スリーアウトチェンジ。楠谷打ちました。掴んだ。これでワンアウト。ランナーは一塁三塁変わります。さあ調子を上げることができるか。打ちました。大島取った。二塁送球。二塁フォースアウト。送球それた。楠山なおもピンチが続きます。バッターは2年生板倉。今日はフォアボールと。これは内野ゴロ。長嶋ボールを取る。一塁送球アウト。スリーアウトチェンジ。大島楠谷打った。取りました。これでツーアウト。ランナーありません。楠山ファール。スライダー空振り。右バッターボックスは4番長嶋。これが4度目のバッターボックス。打った。これは強烈。打球はそのまま伸びていく。レフトセンター見送った。ホームラン。ツーランホ。ワンアウトだ。引っ掛けた。内野ゴロ。サードから二塁送球。セカンドフォースアウト。これでツーアウト。ランナーは一塁か。セカンド左。一塁へ送る。アウト。スリーアウトチェンジ。8回の表が一夜。右バッター楠山で楠山今日二塁ランナー三塁へ。大島掴んだ。一塁送球アウト。楠山なおもピンチが続きます。 杉山ボールを掴んだ。アウト。これでツーアウト。ランナーは打ちました。初球打ち。セカンドゴロ正面。アウト。スリーアウトチェンジ。2さあ究極の思考が解き放たれることになるか。つけて打った。中山バックしていった。秋山ナイスバッティングです。さあ黄色い線を背中に受けてやる気もみなぎります。打ちました。三遊間の打球。有坂取った。ボールはファーストへ。アウト。布施山なおもチャンスや。先ほどヒットを放っている瀬沼。さあここは勝負するか、それとも満塁策を取るか。打ちました。ボールはライナーでセンターへ。これはヒットになります。ボールが点々と転がっている。布施山2点入りました。8対2。バッターはさあ究極の思考が今解き放たれ。低めのボール引っ掛けた。当たりそこでのセカンドゴロ。二塁フォースアウト。これでツーアウト。ランナーは一塁変わりません。打ちました。痛烈。伸びた。伸びていった。ライトセンター見送った。ホームラン。ツーランホームラン。2打席連発。フォークを完璧に捉えました。さあチームメイトからも祝福を受け。市原この回痛烈な当たり。三遊間。南條いいバッティングを右バッターボックスは2番福崎。今日5度目のバッターボックス。これは引っ掛けた。これはゲッツーコースか。アウト。ワンアウトランナー二塁にか。今日2三振の大宮。つけて打つ。アルボ打ちました。セカンド掴みました。勝利まであと1。今日2本のヒットを放っている有坂。打った引っ張った。レフトの左。ファー流し打ち。取りました。ゲームセット。布施山2回戦突破です。2回戦を見事勝利しました。
Success mode. Success mode is one of the biggest things that is in the Power Pro series, and to describe it, it's basically a racing sim, but with, what's the word I'm looking for? It's got stats, and it's got things like you're able to go on dates with girls, you're able to do little extra mechanics along the outside to help you increase your stats, and the idea is you just got to lead your team through to a specific goal. This game has 3 scenarios, most of the games do, although I remember one game that has like 10 of them, where you basically just need to get through the story and succeed at your goal in order to move on to the next scenario, and you can get your player out at the end of it and put them through another mode, whether it be My Life or Pennant or what have you. And it works. It works pretty well, but the problem is, it's also another one of those Japanese heavy modes. It's not hard to figure out what the mechanics are. Like, for example, the scenario that I'm playing on screen here basically has me farming crops, and that seems to be the entire thing of the first scenario, is that takes place in like a farming school of all things. There is a lot of story to it though, and that story is usually impenetrable if you can't understand Japanese, so considering that I can't read Japanese, I usually consider this mode as a relatively unique but rather pointless way of raising my dudes. I wish they were bringing the series to the... I didn't mean to press that again, god damn it. I really do wish that they would bring this series back to the West so I could actually understand what some of these success plots are about, because some of them can get utterly insane, like how characters can die and come back between stories, some commit suicide, some get put in robot bodies, sometimes they get teleported to like post-apocalyptic worlds. The Power Pro Pocket series, which are the ones that only came out on Game Boy and Game Boy Advance and DS, are absolutely ridiculous about this, and I wish those would get fan translations as well, because that is basically like an ongoing series of ridiculous over-the-top stories. I'm not sure if this game is one of those ridiculous over-the-top stories, but from what I've read online about the previous games, their success modes generally tend to stay a bit more down to earth, but at the same time, I would like to play them, I just really can't. I can't enjoy them for everything that they have to offer, just because, well, they're not in English. So it's not a bad mode, but unless you can read Japanese, it's not something I'd recommend you play. We're going to move straight to the Tokyo 2020 Olympics mode for this one and not check out the next obvious one because it's my favorite. But the Tokyo 2020 Olympics mode is actually brand new to this version of the game, and it's a pretty simple one to understand. You have 5 teams other than the Japanese team. You control the Japanese team, and you have to try and lead them to victory through a series of like place setting matches that determine where you are on the tournament ladder, and then you have to win the tournament ladder. So it's a pretty simple thing to understand. Where this sets itself apart from your regular old-fashioned mode is that you can actually play this with up to 4 people in cooperative play, and you can use that to, you can play as Japan and try and take on everybody else with like 3 other people around the one TV. Neat idea, and it's probably the most expressive of that thing you see in the main menu down in the bottom right corner, which says this mode is meant for everyone, which they have on like every mode for some reason. It's weird. They've got it on Pennant, they've got it on Exhibition, they've got it on the Power Festival mode, they've even got it on Home Run Attack, which is a bit weird, but it just seems a bit too widespread. But if you're just having a few friends over who want to play a weird Japanese game and you want to use them. You want to have them take on the rest of the world with you as Japan's baseball team? You could do that. As to whether the other players are accurate though, I couldn't tell you. Mainly because Australia is actually represented in this game as a team that you can play against, but I couldn't find any details listing the roster of the Tokyo 2020 Australian baseball team. So it's not like that was something I was actually able to go and check. Not a great situation to be in, if I'm being honest, but there you go. I will also point out that the tournament mode, which is directly below Tokyo 2020 Olympics on the main menu, is more or less the Tokyo 2020 Olympics mode, but just able to be done manually. So you can use it to create a different set of teams, you can use it to do the Tokyo 2020 style, or you can just do like a couple of other styles of tournament as well that can be controlled by the players or the computer, if you so desire. As far as I can tell, you can't actually do that online, which is a bit of a bummer, but I don't really got a problem with it, I suppose. Not massively anyway. I imagine how much of a pain in the ass that would be to set up. Knowing my luck, I'd never get through a single tournament.
では改めてビッグデーをご覧いただきたいと思います。日本ダメ押しのチャンスです。ツーアウトランナー二塁という場面で坂本、日本一本打ってダメ押しといきたい。ストレートはボール。投げた。危ない球。投げました。打ちました。掴んでこれでスリーアウトになります。9回の表が終わって7対4、日本リードを3点としています。日本オープニングラウンド3戦目を見事勝利しました。さて本日のヒーローは ーナメントで一番優位なグループ AB1 位同士の戦いです。日本対オーストラリアノックアウトステージ第4試合の模様を横浜スタジアムよりお送りいたします。早速参りましょう。日本の先発は右の山岡、対するオーストラリアの先発は左のエルナンデス。この両投手の投げ合いです。さあ準決勝に進むのはどちらのチームになるのか。右の山岡、まずは1回の表、先頭バッターはボウリュー。投げました。初球を打った、取りました。これでワンアウト、ランナーはありません。ワンアウトランナー一塁という場面でミラー第1球、初球打ち、破った。ボールは中継。ミラー、いいバッティングを見せました。日本先制のピンチを迎えます。打った。あっとインフィールドフライ、外崎落下点に入った。掴みました。これでツーアウト、ランナーは一塁二塁変わりません。投げました。引っ張った。ライトへの打球、クリーンヒット。バウチャー三塁回った。オーストラリア早くも先制。リプレイで先制の場面をご覧いただいています。日本追う展開で迎える2回です。ノーアウトランナー一塁という場面で山田、初球外れてボール。第2球投げました。2球目空振り。第3球を投げました。これはいい当たりだ。入れば逆転だ。左中間入ったホームラン、逆転ツーランホームラン。リプレイで逆転の場面をご覧いただきます。オーストラリア追う展開で迎える3回です。ツーアウトランナー一塁という打った痛烈な当たり、一塁へ送る。アウト、スリーアウトチェンジ。オーストラリアファーストランナー残塁。3回の表が終わって2対1です。オーストラリア追う展開で迎える4回です。ワンアウトランナー一塁という場面で打ちました。山岡掴んだ、アウト。日本同点のピンチを迎えます。ランナー1人を置いて迎えるバッターはジェンキンスに打ちました。セカンド、これは守備範囲内、アウト、スリーアウトチェンジ。リプレイをご覧ください。山岡ツーアウト。4回の裏、日本攻撃に入ります。この回のトップバッターは山田。投げた、決まってストライク。まずは見送りました。さあ次の投球、投げた、打ちました。ラポアントボールを掴んだ、アウト。これでワンアウト、ランナーはありません。オーストラリア追う展開で迎える6回です。ツーアウトランナー一塁、インコースのボール左へ、打球はサードの左、アウト、スリーアウトチェンジ。一塁ランナーペレス残塁に終わりました。6回の表が終わって2対1です。エルナンデス痛恨のノックアウト。右のモーリス今日2番。日本リードで迎える6回です。今日2打点山田。インハイ際どい球、ボール。第2球投げた、ストレート空振り。投げた、ボール。第4球を投げた、ボール。内角低め。第5球投げました。際どい球選んでフォアボール。日本リードで迎える7回です。ワンアウトランナー一塁という場面で山田、今日はツーランホームランを打っています。1球目ストライクから第2球完全に外れたボール。投球は3球目投げました。打ったこれは強烈、伸びたセンター見送った。オーストラリア何としても得点を挙げたい9回です。バッターはジェンキンス。日本ここは何としても抑えたい。初球から打ってった、サード右へのゴロ、アウト。ゲームセット。日本ノックアウトステージ初戦を見事制しました。さあ本日のヒーローは2名。間もなくインタビューが始まります。本当に今日は2人とも大活躍でした。お送りしてまいりましたノックアウトステージ第4試合、日本代表が勝利して次の戦いに駒を進めました。この勢いで次のゲームに期待しましょう。
Speaking of online, let's talk about online next. So, the competition mode. The competition mode is pretty simple to understand. You have a points counter that you earn points on whether or not you win, lose, or draw. Obviously, you win more if you get more if you win, but you still get some if you lose. And you can use that to build up to unique rewards. So you can get things like titles and visual accessories and what have you. You can play against anyone you want with any rules you want, but that won't earn you any points. Instead, the way that you do that is playing via the pre-made game rules that they have set for you. So, like the ones that I was playing had, say, 12... basically, you could only use the 12 original teams. But there are ones that come along every now and again that let you bring in your own custom team. So it's not like you're just stuck to the basic 12 teams. And you can just check the rules before you go in and see if you're willing to play. Like, the one that most people were playing when I jumped in to check out the always online multiplayer mode was the one that was basically just 12 teams, 6 innings, good luck, more or less. And that was fine by me. That was enough for me. But the more in-depth ones might give you a little bit more room to grow and be at the top of the ladder when the season ends. And those, the season I say, they only last a week. The modes swap out every week, but I imagine that it'll just keep like the same 6 innings, 12 original teams, good luck to your son sort of move to them, which is fine by me. And as I said, you can play with the rules however you want. The question is though, how is the online play? Now, I admit that I was playing this on my Switch Wi-Fi, and I was playing against people from Japan. They didn't seem to have gone to the effort of changing their, like, quotes or anything to imply that they weren't from Japan, so I'm assuming that I was playing from people from Japan. And I live in Australia, so the distance between us isn't as intense as, say, someone from the United States, or any other country that's, like, further away from Japan than Australia is. What I will say is that while every single game I played was stuttery, it never got in the way of the gameplay because of the way it worked. You see, whenever I would say, see the guy throw a pitch, or whether I would throw a pitch, what the game would do was freeze for a split second to communicate the fact to the other end that this is the pitch that was getting thrown. And then, when the player would hit, there would be another split second freeze to send back to the other player, hey, this was the hit, this is what the angle, direction, and speed that it was going. And then it would stammer every, like, half step to keep the players in sync with each other. But I will say, excuse me, I will say that it was infinitely more playable than the PlayStation Vita versions ever were. I don't know why this is. I don't know if this was a change to the netcode that was done via Konami's end, or I don't know if this is something to do with the Switch's architecture that makes the game play out this way. I'm willing to bet it was the latter though, because I've heard of a couple of multiplayer games which are really bad about this, although it's entirely possible that Konami actually did a good thing for once. That would certainly be something, and I will say that I am much more likely to go in and play a game of multiplayer than I ever was on the PlayStation Vita versions, and I never played them on the PlayStation Vita because of how laggy they were. So, if that gives you an idea, that gives you an idea. Probably still not going to play it very much, but they've still improved it, and I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt for that. 山田ボールを掴んだ二塁へ送る二塁アウトこれでスリーアウトベイスターズさあバッターは1番坂口第9を投げた打ったファウル第2球は空振り軽くポンポーンと追い込みます打ちましたボテボテのショートゴロ大和掴んだ一塁へ送るアウトこれでワンアウトそしてバッターは塩見まずは初球アウトコース高めいっぱいストライクまずは入れてきましたセーフティーバントファウルカウント2ストライクさあ外してくるのかアウ
アウトコース高め、空振り三振。浜口3球勝負で仕留めました。投げた。ボール外れた。いいコースですがわずかに外。投げました。打った。これはセカンド正面。外、ボールを掴んだ。一塁送球。アウト。スリーアウトチェンジ。1回がし。
Up next is Home Run Attack. Now, Home Run Attack is actually two separate modes. The first mode, which they call Score Attack, is exactly what you think it is. You get 10 balls thrown at you, and if you get 10 home runs, well, you don't so much win, but you get a really high score. Because this game tracks everything from the height to the distance to how hard you hit the ball. So, basically, the better that you do, even in the most microscopic of levels, the better the score you'll get, and it will eventually start to get more complicated. If you get 5 home runs in a row, he starts putting them off center. If you get more than that, they will eventually go more off center, and you need to be very, very, very precise, which is why I recommend swapping from the analog movement to the digital movement for Home Run Attack. It's very useful. And you can share your scores online, and you will, of course, earn rewards and achievements while you do, which is great. So, yeah, that's one part of it. And the second part of it is the 4-player party game mode, where you can get up to 4 people, but you can even play it alone with AI people playing alongside you. And the idea is that you need to try and get more points than the competition, and sometimes you'll have items dropped in, such as things that'll make it harder for the player to hit the ball, or easier for them to get more distance off of it, you know, things like that. And you can drop that in right in the middle of one of their combos and break it so hard that they start to cry. You know, it's the whole Mario Party, if you don't keep your hands off that star, our friendship is over sort of thing going on, right? It's good fun, but I doubt I'll ever get anyone to play it with me. It works well enough though. さあ今度は放り込みたい。飛んでいった。これをまさに目の覚めるような一発。これで6本だ。フライになった。いただけません。さあ最後の1球。マシンで捉えた。打球はそのまま伸びていく。素敵な一発をぶちかまします。これが7本目。これにてスコアアタック終了。さあ現在最終スコアの集計中です。これが今回の最終スコアになります。ハイスコア更新。素晴らしい記録を打ち立てました。会心の記録に喜びを隠せません。以上スコアアタックでした。さあアイテムカモン。さあ1周目の挑戦。もちろん初っ端から大きいのを見せてほしいと見逃します。さあ古びたバットを警戒してぐんぐんバットの使用は見送るのか。来たか。レフトへ大きな当たり。ホームランだ。ホームラン。さあぐんぐんバットを出せば古びたバットで阻止する可能性が高まってきた。これでかいぞ。ビッグアーチ。見事な一発。
効いているか。ラッキー、ここは出してきません。打ったぞ、いけいけいけ。スケスケゴーグル回を生かせない。2度目の挑戦。さあこの打席は使えるアイテムなし。実力を見せてもらいましょう。お、いったかこりゃ。すんごいパワー。まさに目の覚めるような一発。さあ古びたバットを警戒してぐんぐんバットの使用は見送るのか。ラッキー、ここは出してきません。と空振り。さあ古びたバットでパワーダウンを狙うのか。ああ、古びたバットを使われるとパワーが下がってしまうが、いかに。これは低い。ああ、3度目の挑戦です。さあ現在1位とはいえ油断できる状況ではありません。きたー、文句なしの当たりだ。豪快に決まった。さあここでホームランを決めてトップとの差を詰めていきたい。前の週の鬱憤を晴らせるか。ぶっ飛ばした。これは気持ちのいい当たりになった。豪快に飛び込んだ。さあここでホームランを決めて2位との差を詰めていきたい。前の週の鬱憤を晴らせるか。いい当たりだ。来るか来るのか。これは惜しい。ホームランならず。さあ古びたバットでパワーダウンさせてくるのか。とアイテム未使用。ここはいったー。来る来るぞ。素敵な一発をぶちかまします。4度目の挑戦です。さあ何としてもホームランを打ちたい場面。ここで2位との差を離しておきたい。オッケー、大変ビッグな当たりになった。かっこよさを見せつけます。さあ前の週でホームラン、さらにここも決めてトップとの差を詰めていきたい。なんとレフトへ打球が伸びていく。入った入った。ホームラン。さあここでホームランを決めれば3位を狙えそうだ。前の週のリベンジになるか。どうか。右中間へ大きいぞ。入った。さあ前の週ではホームラン、さらにここも決めれば3位を狙えそうだ。飛んでいった。これは熱い展開になりそうだ。まさに目の覚めるような一発。最後の挑戦になります。このままトップをキープできるか。マシンで捉えた。これを待っていた。素敵な一発をぶちかまします。さあ前の週でホームラン、さらにここも決めてトップとの差を詰めていきたい。とこれは当たらず。古びたバットを出されるとパワーが下がってしまうぞ。完璧に捉えた。打球はそのまま伸びていく。かっこよさを見せつけます。さあ古びたバットでパワーを下げていくのか。あっとラッキー、なぜか妨害アイテムを出してきませんでした。なんてこったい。これにてバトル終了。白熱のホームランバトル、結果はいかに。さあボーナススコア発表。ひっくり返すことはあるのか。最多ホームラン賞、最長飛距離賞、合計飛距離賞。1位になったのは友澤。非常に見応えのあるそんな勝負。以上白熱のホームランバトルでした。
live scenario is almost exactly what it sounds like. So the way this works is you pick out, let me try this again from the beginning. So as this game has come out, the Japanese baseball season is proceeding along over in Nippon. And every single game comes down into the live scenario. However, it gives you one particular part of that game that you are then dropped into and need to turn around for the team that you decide to go on, because you can play on both sides. And if you manage to pull it off, hooray, you'll get points, you'll get more rewards towards your achievements, and you'll go to over the top of the leaderboards, because everything in this game has a freaking leaderboard. The one major improvement to this version of the live scenario mode, though, is that you can actually select what team you want to be on when you're actually out and doing the scenarios, which means that I spent all my time doing my scenarios for the Dina Baystars, because of course I did. So yeah, it's great for drop in, play for 5 minutes, and then drop out again, especially if you're pretty good at the game, because you can very easily start knocking over scenarios and then building up a good set of points to earn things such as achievements in the Pawa Arena stream.
Baystars 圧勝です。さて今日のヒーローは勝利投手の伊野。本当に今日は大明治神宮野球。さあ先制のチャンスを迎えました。ワンアウト満塁という場面で外初球を打ちました。これは内野ゴロ。二塁フォースアウト。アウトゲッツー。スリーアウトチェンジ。第1球投げました。決まったストライク。初球空振りから第2球真ん中にストライク。伸びのあるストレート。第3球を投げました。打ちました。バットが折れた。西浦ボールを掴んだ。これでゲームが動き始めました。ベイスターズなおもチャンスが続きます。第1球投げた。打った。キャッチャー落下点に入りました。バックネットの前でボールをつかみました。第1球投げた。完全に外れたボール。第2球投げた。打った。これはいい当たりだ。入れば先制だ。さらに伸びていく。ボールは中継。ランナー2塁でストップ。ベイスターズ3点入りました。3対0。第1球投げた。アウトローボール。第2球投げた。おっとデッドボール。これはデッドボール。第1球投げました。危ない球。投げました。外角高め空振り。伸びのあるストレート。投げました。打ちました。泳いだバッティング。フラフラっと上がった。ファースト落下点に入りました。掴んだ。これでツーアウト。ランナーはフルベース変わりません。第1球投げました。ボール。投球これから2球目。打ちました。三塁ランナーはホームへ。セカンドフォースアウト。アウト。ダブルプレー。スリーアウトチェンジ。第1球投げました。膝元。ストレートは外れてボール。第2球 外角低めいっぱいストライク第3球を投げた打ったこれは強烈いった一直線入ったホームラン先制満塁ホームランレフトスタンドに叩き込んだストレートを狙い撃ちチームメイトが迎えますベイスターズ2点差で逃げ切りました
And finally, my personal favorite mode of the lot, and that is Power Festival. First introduced in the very first Power Pro game that I played, which was very good luck on my part personally. It's a very arcadey style mode. It's got the same stat building going on that the other modes have, but the idea is that you're on a gigantic floating airship with a baseball field in the middle of it, and you need to win 5 straight games in order to win the Powerful Festival. And the way that you do this is you go through and you face other individual teams, and when you win against them, you get to take some of their players. And by the end of the game, you will have built up an absolutely massive ass team that you can then take on through to the final challenge, which I won't spoil because they are usually incredibly over the top in this series, and it's great. Because back in, like, was it 2018? The blue-haired commentator dude went fucking Super Saiyan. I'm not even kidding. That's exactly what it looked like. But yeah, I won't spoil it on this one. But the way that this mode works is that I said it's like an arcade mode, right? So your chances are you won't make it to the end on your first try. I got to the end of my 3rd try, but I didn't manage to win. And the idea is that the guys that you captured and leveled up after every individual match will maintain that experience over into the next time that you play. And you can actually take along a set of people when you can actually take along a set of people every time you start up. So you don't have to start from absolutely nothing, and you can grind up your favorite players and make them even better. And they've improved it in this mode by doing a couple of things. One is that you can pick one character from the list of 250 or so that you can take along with you all the time. You will always be on the list of people that you can select a group of players to start with, right? Second is that they've actually made it so that by the more that you manage to get people off a team, the better medals that you'll get for that team. So if someone starts off with just like 2 people that you can recruit and you get both of them by winning with 2 runs, you will actually get a gold medal. But if you only manage to get like 3 people out of 9 off one team, you'll only get like a bronze medal. And the more people that you get, the more you'll upgrade your medals. And your medals actually give you permanent stat boosts. So not only are you unlocking more dudes to bring along with you that are stronger and stronger with every game, you're also giving yourself a leg up from the very bottom in order to become even stronger. The third is that the AI actually used to be a bit of a bitch in this mode. What it would do is it would give you a dramatic game, finger quotes, where it would require you to, where it would skip between certain innings in order to make things a little bit more interesting by simulating some of the games in order to not only keep the game short, but in order to keep them interesting by like letting you take control and earn runs whenever you could, right? Whenever you would either be below and trying to get ahead, or whether it just decides to be friendly and let you get a few extra runs ahead. The AI has become a lot friendlier in this one. It doesn't screw you over anywhere near as much. It doesn't go anywhere near as many innings without giving you a shot. It doesn't give the AI it doesn't give the AI player anywhere near as many just random runs out of nowhere in between like your turns. And it's just a lot friendlier. And as a result, the game feels a lot less irritating when you can actively say to yourself, yeah, I wasn't able to learn that pitcher's moves fast enough. I wasn't able to learn, I wasn't able to just, do my fielding jobs properly. I lost that fair and square. That feels a lot more like this mode now. And it's always been my favorite, not only because of the fact that, it's like, one of the relatively shorter modes. Like a full run through of Power Festival will take you like 90 minutes at most. But it will also, it also has the game's best exploration of its theme, its style, and its taste. And what I mean by this is that Power Festival, back in 2016 when it was first introduced, was actually a sort of anniversary mode, where they brought back a bunch of the different characters from the previous game's success stories, and put them all into their own individual teams in this mode that you could then go and fight. So not only would you get to see the character designer's sense of humor with all of these ridiculous designs and cool teams and ridiculous things like pitches and powers and abilities and what have you, but you'd also get to see that little window into the history of this series, which has been building for the past 30 so years. And that is cool as shit. And it also helps with giving the game a lot of variety, because it'll take you like 6 or 7 runs to even come close to seeing all the teams that they've got available in this one, let alone capturing everybody, let alone getting all the gold medals and getting your base stats powered up and all of that. So it's highly replayable. It's really short. It's short enough to be enjoyable in relatively short bursts. And it's got that sense of style about it, which Power Pros just carries in spades, just in secrecy when you're playing like Pennant or My Life and you're trying to be serious about it. But when you come around to Power Festival mode and you think to yourself, I just want the game to goof off and have as much fun with this concept as possible, that's exactly what it does, and I love it when it does that.
ますよ。ルーレットスタート。先行 DH あり。以上のルールで試合が行われます。
パワフルフェスティバルもついに2回戦に突入しました。一塁側は個人エントリーチームチャレンジャーズ。今日は何を仕掛けるのか。対しましてお江戸に響くはラテンのリズム、その名も混合チーム大江戸カーニバルズです。いけだね。さあパワフェスチャレンジャーズ対大江戸カーニバルズ、エキサイティングなバトルが予想される2回戦を私熱森がお送りいたします。大江戸カーニバルズ、先発投手がマウンドに上がります。期待しましょう。注目の投球です。さあ出た。今日も元気にご登場、魅惑のメガネボーイ矢部明夫。第1球を投げました。真ん中空振り。打った痛烈な当たり。素敵ヒットだ。セカンドへ放り投げる。やべえ、ナイスなバッティングです。ノーアウトで先制のランナーが出ました。打席には2番バッターが入ります。第2球を投げました。打ちました。ヒット。二塁はセーフ。いいバッティングを見せました。パワフェスチャレンジャーズ、先制のチャンスを迎えます。切れていきます。ファール。第2球投げた。打ちました。切れていきます。ファール。次はどう攻めるのか。打った。ライナーセンター前ヒット。かっこよさを見せつけます。パワフェスチャレンジャーズ、なおもチャンスが続きます。インコース低めストライク。シンカー見送ってボール。カウント1ボール1ストライク。投球3球目。きたー。文句なしの当たりだ。ライトセンター見送った。ホームラン。先制満塁ホームラン。いらっしゃい。右中間スタンドに叩き込んだ。変化球を完璧に捉えました。パワフェスチャレンジャーズ、先発投手がマウンドに。1番バッターが打席に入ります。さあ1球目投げた。変化球ピンピンに切れています。これはすっぽ抜けたボール。投球3球目投げました。アウトロー見送ってストライク。打ちました。取りました。これではさあご覧ください、この情熱的な打。第1球を投げました。外角低めストライク。打ちました。ファールグラウンドへ飛んじゃっています。ファウル。渾身のストレート空振り三振。ここはバッテリーに軍配が上がりました。では改めてリプレイをご覧。中盤まで終了。同点で迎える7回です。打席には2番バッターが入ります。一気に行きたいところ。投球2球目パワーカーブはストライク。追い込まれました。さあ外してくるのか。シュートはボール。カウント1ボール2ストライク。引っ張った。投球これから5球目 打った真ん中空振り三振。スイングアウトの三振に倒れました。打席には3番バッターが入ります。さあ初球、来たか。さあ来い、来てしまえ。ダイレクトで当たった。ツーベース。パワフェスチャレンジャーズ勝ち越しのチャンスを迎えます。さあ4番が打席に入ります。さあ遠慮はいらない。ここでぶっ飛ばした。さあ体がほてってきた。フェンスのお外へぶち込んだ。スリーランホームラン。この人を侮ってはいけなかった。ストレートを完璧に捉えました。終盤での貴重なホームラン。胸が熱くなりますね。パワフェスチャレンジャーズ、ここはなんとかしのぎたい。8番バッターが打席に入ります。早川、点差もあるので気負わず行きたい。どうだ。三塁ランナーはホームへクリーンヒット。二塁ランナー三塁回った。青江のカーニバルズ2点返しました。それでは先ほどの得点シーン、パワフェスチャレンジャーズ、さらに同点のピンチです。打席には9番バッター、打ちました。パワフェスチャレンジャーズ、内野陣はゲッツー体勢。切れていきます。ファール。さあ4球目、オーマイガー、ナイスなのが飛んでしまっている。打球が転がっている。カットマンへ送る。まずは同点。早川、タイムリーツーベースを打たれます。パワフェスチャレンジャーズ、ここが踏ん張りどころ。1番バッターが打席に入ります。早川、苦しい展開。際どい打球、取った。パワフェスチャレンジャーズ、ピンチが続きます。打席には2番バッターが入ります。空振り、変化球が冴え渡ります。パワフェスチャレンジャーズ、ここは引っ張りに警戒します。打ち取ったか。平凡なフライになりそうだ。これでアウトが3つ。攻守交代です。7回まで同点で迎える8回です。打席には9番バッター、積極的初球を打ちました。センター前クリーンヒット。いい当たりが炸裂しています。今日初めてのヒットになりました。さあ矢部が矢部たるゆえんを見せてほしい。さあ遠慮は、こりゃいいぞ。これはヒットになりそうだ。落ちました。ヒット。ボールは中継。三塁でストップ。パワフェスチャレンジャーズ、ここで勝ち越しました。大江戸カーニバルズ、何としても得点を挙げたい9回です。打席には9番バッター、これは見送ってボール。低めに攻めていきます。投げました。ミットへ一直線。指にかかったストレート。パワフェスチャレンジャーズ、ここで前進守備を敷きます。おっとすっぽ抜け、余計な力が入ったか。打ちました。いい当たり。打ったバッターは二塁へ向かった。ツーベースヒット。1番バッターが打席に入ります。投げた。抜群の切れ味。バッター動けません。ここは外野陣が深めの守備位置に変わっています。打った。ファーストバックファウル。第4球を渾身のストレートはボール。ワンボールツーストライク。打った。いい当たりだ。右中間へのヒット。ボールはコロコロ状態。青江戸カーニバルズ、点差を2点に縮め。大江戸カーニバルズ、得点を挙げ、なおもランナー一塁。打席には2番バッターが入ります。インロー、ギリギリいっぱいストライク。さあいよいよあと1球。さあ次は何で来るか。見送ってボール。さあ仕留められるか。初球見逃し三振。パワフェスチャレンジャーズ、最後をしっかり締めて見事勝利しました。非常に熾烈な戦い。パワフェスチャレンジャーズがガチンコ勝負を制しました。これが真の実力でしょうか。3回戦へ駒を進めます。
So yeah, that was a look at every single mode, every single thing that was included with Power Pros 2020. There are a couple of other things that I would like to mention though, just before we go. As I said, no DLC, no microtransactions, mainly just like buying a couple of extra licensed songs. You get a ton of free items every single day. If you come back and you just go into the menus for every one of the menu options that's highlighted, you'll get a bunch of free items. So you'll get a bunch of everything for every mode, and then you can just go away and come back the next day if you want to. There's always something to do, whether it be checking the live scenarios for new games, whether it be looking at what's going on in the weekly challenge over in the Pawa arena to see if you can earn yourself some extra items, practicing your skills in home run attack, doing another run through Power Festival mode, managing your team in Crown 9, playing a solo career in My Life, playing a team career in the Pennant, seeing a ridiculous story in the Success mode, or just cooperating with friends in the Tokyo 2020 Olympics, or beating the crap out of them in home run attack. It's got a great style. The only real criticisms I have are kind of basically the Switch version holding it back. Because I've tried playing this portably, the Joy-Con analog stick is really painful to try and play this on, if I'm being honest with you. It's just really hard to aim with it. I've mainly been playing with a Pro controller. That's what all the footage that you've seen so far has been of. And again, the resolution goes down so hard that it starts resembling shitty FMV from 2006, which isn't particularly pleasant because even the Vita didn't have that problem, and the Vita is significantly underpowered in comparison to the Switch. And the 2018 version of this, while it didn't look better, it didn't look better than the Switch version. It didn't look like that. It didn't have this weird little blurry filter over everything that is very obvious that they've just dropped the resolution of the Switch a bit. And of course, the online play, if you're not on the same continent, it's not going to be very pleasant, but at the very least, it seems to have improved since the last outing the series had. So, yeah. Power Pros 2020 is great. It's got everything that I want in it, plus a few extras, and everything that was good about it has been tweaked or not really screwed with, as far as I can tell. The biggest major complaints that I've seen so far on like Amazon Japan, which is where I usually go to see like the reviews of people who are happy or unhappy with these games, the biggest complaint is that there hasn't been enough big changes. But I mean, it's a sports game. I don't know what you'd expect from big changes. Like a couple of extra new modes, sure. I mean, we got Tokyo 2020, but that wasn't much of a new mode. But all the minor things that they've added to it, I'm fine with. And I'm happy to give them a pass on this one, because outside of the fact that playing on a Switch is a pain in the ass, it's really well done. Would I recommend it? Absolutely. Would I recommend it over the Vita versions? Probably, considering that this version is probably going to be way easier to access in the future. And I'm really looking forward to those Switch emulators getting a bit more mature, so that this can actually work on the PC properly, since we haven't been able to get a up-to-date version of this game on the PC since like 2015 on the PSP. And that was a while ago. I want to play my Pawafes on my PC in 4K, goddammit. But yeah, I wholeheartedly recommend Power Pros 2020. It is an absolutely fantastic game, as were the last two, but it's been tweaked in all the right ways, and it's got everything that it needs to be really enjoyable. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what they have in stock, because next, they are actually supporting this for at least 2 years. We know this for a fact. We know that they're going to update it for the 2021 roster, and the last 2 times that they did that, they included a brand new mode. They included a Koshien Spirits mode in 2019, and Championship mode over here was the bonus mode they added when they did it for 2017. So, I don't know what 2021 is going to bring, but hopefully it's interesting. This has been Blue Maxima, and I will see you all next time.